Welcome to Inspiration and Transformation from the Banks of the Ganga with Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati, an American sannyasi living at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. Sadhvi is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a charitable organization bringing education, vocational training, upliftment, and empowerment programs to women and children. Sadhvi is also Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance and Director of the world-famous International Yoga Festival. Join the musings of an American sannyasi as Sadhvi shares the wisdom and teachings of her guru, His Holiness Pujya Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji.
Welcome everyone to Inspiration and Transformation from the holy banks of the sacred Ganga River in the land of Rishikesh, India.
Do we have to accept everything as God's will? Or is it okay to be dissatisfied because, well, many wonderful things were invented by someone who didn't like the way things were, so they invented something different? There's two layers of existence. There's actually many layers, but we'll categorize them into two categories for the simplicity of a short satsang rather than a one-year course on levels of being and consciousness. And the two layers are, we could call them the physical level, and then we could call them the spiritual level. So we've got both of those two levels, two layers. Each of us has a physical body, bleeds if you cut it, gets uncomfortable if you don't eat, uncomfortable if you don't sleep, eventually gets sick, passes away. The physical body keeps changing. Then we have our soul, spirit, never born, never dies, never changes, one with all. And I begin this answer with that because the question is trying to take two levels, two layers, and merge them into one. And you can't really do that. We have to take both layers at the same time because they're both important. Even as we grow and expand and deepen as spiritual beings, we're not supposed to neglect the body. This is why there's such a beautiful emphasis in the spiritual world on yoga, on pranayam, on living a sattvic life. Not only because it helps us spiritually, but because it takes care of our physical bodies. So even as we live as spirit, as soul, we know we've got a body and we need to take care of it. Now, the way that these two layers show up in our life a lot is on the spiritual level, everything is perfect. There is nothing but God. Everything is God. On the physical level, things need to be changed. There's hungry people. There's oppressed people. Environment is being polluted and destroyed. There's so much to be done. A very simple way to think about it is you're walking down the street and somebody in front of you trips and falls. Okay? Now everything's perfect. Everything's God, right? We say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am God, everything is God. And yet, this guy has fallen, or this lady has fallen, or this child has fallen right in front of you. Obviously, you need to bend down and help them up, even though everything's perfect. And the two of them don't cancel each other out. It's not that because I feed the hungry, I don't think everything's perfect. It's not that in planting trees, we somehow are doubting the perfection of God. We live both levels simultaneously. Everything is perfect. Everything is God. And as Bhagavan Krishna makes it so clear in the Bhagavad Gita, each of us needs to stand up and do our duty. And whether it's helping this person up off the floor, planting a tree, serving other people in so many ways, we do it. While simultaneously we realize everything is perfect and everything is God. Now, if you try in your intellectual mind to make those two things merge into one awareness, you'll make yourself kind of crazy. Because you can't. They don't actually go together. I mean, if everything's perfect, why help the person? If everything's perfect, why feed the hungry? If everything's perfect, why plant trees? And this is why we meditate. It's why we go deep on a spiritual path, because only when we go deep can we actually experience the presence of both simultaneously and realize it's not either or. Yes, everything is God. Yes, everything is perfect. And, it's like they say, right? Have faith in God and tie your camel. Right? Yes, I believe in God. But it's my only camel. I need him. I'm going to tie him up to the tree while I take a nap. So those levels, those layers are really important to realize both of them exist simultaneously. We take care of the body, even though we are the soul. We take care of other people's bodies. We feed them. We give them education. We give them medical care. We treat them with respect, even though they are also the soul. So we live on both levels simultaneously. And that's the goal, is actually to live on both simultaneously. So then you look at this question. You say, is it okay to be dissatisfied and not to accept everything as God's will? Well, sure, as long as you're looking at two different levels. Accepting the perfection of God should not make us complacent. I mean, otherwise, every single child in the world just has to say, well, I guess it's, God's will that I fail this exam. I'm going to go out and play. Right? I mean, why study? If it's God's will that I'm going to fail, why bother studying? Hello, let me play my sports, watch my TV, and if it's God's will for me to get a good grade, I'll get a good grade. If not, I won't. But we understand that, yes, God's will is flowing. Yes, there is perfection, and in the same way that Arjuna needed to actually go out on the battlefield, draw his arrow, draw his bow with the arrow, in the same way, we need to act. So yes, dissatisfaction on that level is absolutely fine. I am deeply dissatisfied by the fact that there are children who are hungry. I mean, it's a horrible situation. The idea that there's more than enough food produced. I mean, the United States alone grows enough grain to feed more than 10 billion people a day. But that grain goes to feed the chickens, the cows, and the pigs who become hamburgers, hot dogs, and chicken McNuggets instead of being used to feed people. So tens of thousands of people, tens of thousands of children as well, are dying of hunger every day. And we could feed them all. That makes me deeply dissatisfied. And so we work. And we serve. That dissatisfaction whether it takes the form of pain, sadness, grief, anger, those are catalyzers. They're catalyzing emotions. They're the stuff that get us up off our rear ends, up early in the morning, that make us work to change that with which we are dissatisfied. But at the same time, in the midst of all of it, we must also remember it's all God. It's all God. And that's why, again, we meditate. Because when I meditate, I'm no longer dissatisfied. Right? When I meditate, I touch and experience that infinite perfection. And there is no me, and there is no separate being, and there is no child dying of hunger, and there is no tree being cut down. There is just consciousness. And that enables us to serve without that stress, without that attachment, without that level of panic. Because we know on a deep level, yeah, it's all God. And it's all perfect. And our dissatisfaction is part of that perfection. And I know that may take a little while to wrap your brain around. But I think back, you look back at the Mahabharata, right? Now, Krishna had tried to convince Duryodhana to do the honorable thing. Give him some land. He had tried. Duryodhana didn't listen. Hence the war needed to happen. And yet, Krishna's God, right? So, obviously, if in God's perfection, he really wanted the war not to happen, he would have just made it so. He's God. So here we have those two levels again. Even in God's perfection, when God himself is here in form on earth, part of the drama, in that perfection, is Duryodhana being stubborn, being selfish? Is Arjuna being worried and stressed so that the Bhagavad Gita gets spoken? So that all of us can have it? And also, of course, so many other karmic threads that are woven into the story. So that's what's important for us to realize is our anger at situations, our dissatisfaction, our pain, is part of that perfection because it makes us act to restore Dharma. Because it's certainly not dharmic for kids to be dying of starvation. And so when we have that pang of anger, of sadness, of grief, we work, we serve. So allow yourself, not with your intellectual brain, but with your intuitive feeling heart, with your consciousness as you meditate, to just allow both levels of existence to exist simultaneously. And allow yourself and your awareness to seamlessly and smoothly embrace both, live with both, flow back and forth between both. Yes, we are serving and working. And yeah, everything's perfect and it's God, and we sing and we chant and we dance and we pray. And yeah, there's poverty and hunger, and so we serve. And yeah, it's all perfect as we bathe in Ganga. And yet you see the flow, because they both exist simultaneously.
You're listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Alaya, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Hi, this is Christina Ricci with RAIN. Every 2 minutes, another American is sexually assaulted. If you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, you are not alone. Help is just a call or click away through the National Sexual Assault Hotline. Please call 1-800-656-HOPE, that's HOPE, or visit rain.org, that's RAINN.org.
Brought to you by RAIN and this station.
Welcome back to Inspiration and Transformation. I'm so glad to have you all back here with me.
So she grew up in a Christian family in Brazil. Now she's here. And she said in her youth, she had a lot of beautiful experiences of God in the Christian framework and belief system that she had been raised in. Now she's here. She's having so many beautiful experiences of God in so many ways here. And she said, she sings and she prays to God in the Arti and in the Kirtan. And she's having such deep experiences, and she's sharing them online, on social media. And her friends and family are asking her, are you praying to other gods? Like, this is not okay. That you're doing something that's wrong. And so she's wondering, should I really share with them the depth of what I'm experiencing and try to convince them? Or would that be just useless? So first of all, it's beautiful the experience you're having. What I can tell you, and you can feel free to share this with your friends and family, is that Preeti's recording it anyway, so we can give it to you and you can share it with them, is that within the Hindu tradition, God is one. One of the greatest myths about Hinduism is that it's a polytheistic religion, that we have many gods. We do not. We have one God. In fact, it's even deeper than that. We believe there is nothing but God. And in that nothing but Godness, everything therefore is God. If God is the creator, then everything that has been created is infused with God. There's a lot of different metaphors and examples to help people understand. One of them, for example, is the sun is shining. You've got an infinite number of vessels on the ground. Different sizes, different shapes, different colors, filled with different amounts of water. Each of them is going to give you a different reflection of the sun. But there's only one sun. It's just being reflected differently based on the different vessels. But the sun is one. So that's one way that we think about it. Another way is that we're told in the scriptures that whatever way the devotee worships me, however the devotee thinks about me, I appear to the devotee in that very form. So whatever works for the devotee, because within Hinduism, it's considered very important to be able to have a personal relationship with God, as you said you have. But people have very different characteristics, very different sensibilities. And so it is seen as this graciousness of God to be willing to appear in this infinite number of ways, so that everyone, depending on their sensibility, their way, can experience God. Even within all of our different names and forms of God, it's accepted, it's understood, they are all one. It's all one. Just different embodiments, different manifestations, different incarnations at different times in different ways. Another way to think about it is, you think your father, okay, one man. So at home, maybe he wears his jeans and t-shirt. Maybe your mom calls him honey or sweetheart. Then he goes to the office in a suit and tie, and people call him sir or mister, whatever your last name is. Then he goes out and he plays tennis or golf or whatever he plays with his friends. And he wears his shorts or his tennis clothes or his golf clothes. And maybe they call him by whatever his first name is. Or just, hey, buddy, right? His parents call him son. You call him dad. One man, so many different relationships. Based on all the different people in his life, different costumes, different relationships, different names. In the same way, God has different relationships with everyone. Different forms, different names, no problem. But God is one. So that's how we consider it. So what you should help your friends and family understand is, you're not praying to different gods. You're praying to just cultural variations of the name and the form. It would be like if you went to church in France, and you went to church in Spain, and you went to church in Russia. They would speak about God with different names, because they speak different languages. Songs would be different, prayers would be different. Different cultures, different languages. In the same way, you're praying to God in cultural variations of names and forms and ways, and through these, you are experiencing a more infinite form of God. Now, I wouldn't try to shove that down their throats. It doesn't ever go over very well. But I would gently share it as just an offering. An offering. Here's what I have learned. Here's where I have been transformed. Here's something that really touched me. Keep it personal. Those who are ready and open to accept a greater experience, a greater possibility of the experience of God, will understand. Those who aren't won't. And that's okay. Their time will also come. Because ultimately, whatever we call God, God is in, as we always say, every blade of grass, every drop of water, every tree, because God has given them to us. The same way, if you're child or beloved paints you a picture. The beloved is in the picture. You see the picture, you love it. Because your beloved's love is in the picture. Whether it's artistically a good picture or not. Your beloved is in there. So you love it. The last thing I would tell you is I think actually in the Bible, in the words of Jesus Christ, I think there is actually even a calling to a greater and vaster vision. And here's why I think so. And I was raised Jewish. I was not raised Christian. I am not a scholar of Christianity by any means. But here's my understanding. He has given us an injunction to love thy neighbor as thyself, right? This is a very core teaching of Jesus Christ in the Bible. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Now, I asked a lot of Christians I know, well, does he specify what he means by neighbor? Next door neighbor, 1 block, 2 blocks, 10 blocks, 1 mile radius? And everyone said no, he didn't specify. Now, that's very interesting because if you're giving a teaching, you would be specific. I mean, if you only mean those on your block, you would say, love those on your block as thyself. Love those in a 1 mile radius as thyself. But he didn't give any specifics, which to me means that we cannot assume to put a border or boundary anywhere. We cannot say that we know what he meant when he didn't tell us. So there's no correct place to draw that line, which means ultimately we have to accept that the entire world is our neighbor, because there's no place to draw the line. Now, most of us don't even know the names of everyone on our block, let alone have the capacity to actually love them. Right? I mean, if I say to you, raise your hand if you actually know the name of every person on your block. Does anyone even know that? Right? Not even one. So if we don't even know the name of everyone on our block, how can we love them? And that's only your block. And so it seems to me that the only actual way to follow that instruction, because I don't think he meant it as a suggestion or a vague idea. I think he meant it as a very literal instruction. And to me, the only way to do that is to love God and see everyone as God. Otherwise, there is no way to love everyone. You love God. You understand that you are God. Your capital S self is God. Because it doesn't say love everyone as thy body. Or love everyone as thy ego. Thyself. So I think about the capital S self. The only way to love all of those neighbors as thyself is you love God. You understand you are one with God. You understand, therefore, everyone is ultimately one with God. God is in everyone. And because you love God, you can love everyone. Like because you love your child, you will love every picture they draw. Doesn't matter. Even sight unseen, you know I will love it because your child made it. They say, Mom, I made you a new picture. You will love it. You think, of course I'm going to love it. Of course I'll love it. It'll go right up on the fridge. Of course I'll love it. You made it. So the only way to do that is to love God and see God in everyone. I cannot imagine another way you could fulfill that instruction. And so I actually believe that in that teaching is a calling to an expansive understanding of the presence of God.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
Why is it when we've got a relationship with someone who really loves us fully and completely that we feel trapped? What's that inner instinct to break free from it? Well, on a spiritual level, if your dharma is one that is bringing you toward a path of renunciation, then any kind of relationship like that, especially one where there's so much responsibility, because if someone really loves you, there's a lot of responsibility there. You don't want to hurt them. You want to live up to their love. You want to be what they want. You want to be as they want. Because their love is a gift and you want to honor it. Ideally, you want to return it as well, but at least you want to honor it. So if you're feeling pulled toward a spiritual path of renunciation, that's one reason it could feel like a trap. But there's also other psychological reasons. Because the vast majority of people, especially at your age, are not being pulled to a path of renunciation. You may be. But we'll take the question in a general way, and I'll give you both options. So one option is you feel it because your inner pull is toward that path of sannyas. But another reason, on a psychological or psychology meets spirituality aspect, is on a very deep level, a lot of us feel unworthy of love. And we've got a lot of psychological issues. Anxiety, depression, addictions, all of these sorts of things that stem from a feeling of I'm not enough, not good enough. Now, in order to give validity to that, I need to make sure that my life is kind of a mess. Because then at the end of the day, I've got good reason to be depressed and anxious and miserable and drunk and drug abusing and all of these things. It's very hard to rationalize being miserable when everything is going perfectly. And so if inside of me psychologically, I've got an identification as someone who doesn't deserve happiness, someone who doesn't deserve good things, I'm going to create a mess in the world around me. I'm going to self-sabotage so that what I do at work gets me fired, or at least so that I'm the one who always gets passed over for the promotion. But ideally, I'll get fired and, I'm going to self-sabotage in my relationships so people leave me, so that I create this self-fulfilling prophecy that I don't deserve happiness. And that's a really deep place to have to look at. But if you're finding yourself feeling stuck, like you want to end it, break it, make it fall apartness, in a situation that objectively could seem perfect, you want to ask yourself, what is it about me that maybe I don't feel like I deserve so much love? Right? Because then there's also that voice inside us that's like, well, if you love me that much, there must be something wrong with you. Right? You're going to know this, was it Groucho Marx, one of the Marx brothers, who said, I don't want to be part of the club that'll have me in it? Right? Was it Groucho? So Groucho Marx said, I don't want to be part of any club that will admit me. As in, any club that would allow me to be a member clearly isn't worthy of being a member of the club of. So there's also that sense of, well, if you really love me that much, there must be something wrong with you. And so I better run out of here as quickly as I can, because clearly there's a problem with you. So that sense of I don't deserve real happiness, if that's what's happening, is something that's really deep and important to look at. The third possibility, especially in young people, but not exclusively in young people, is an addiction to drama, which a lot of us have. And in that addiction to drama, when things go really well, there's this sense in us of like restlessness. We've got to somehow stir things up because we are uncomfortable with things being just nice. I remember my very best friend from 4th grade onward. We were best friends through elementary school, junior high, high school, university. She was at Berkeley, I was at Stanford. And when she finally started dating the man who has since been her husband, and in a wonderful marriage, but when they first were together for a while, I remember her saying to me, I don't think I could marry him. And I was like, why? He's just such a nice, wonderful person. And she said, because he just feels like a warm blanket. Now, warm blankets are good things. I mean, that's a really nice thing to come home to. She's a doctor, a very stressful life. But what we realized was that we both had this addiction to drama. That there just had to be some kind of drama unfolding in our lives. And when you're young, where is the source of that? Your relationships. And so the idea of just a warm blanket deprived her of the drama. Now, fortunately, she was psychologically healthy and strong enough that, we understood this about ourselves. And she did end up marrying him, and it's been a perfect, beautiful, wonderful marriage for decades. But the point is that this is something that a lot of us go through. And so you need to ask yourself, okay, 3 possibilities. Which is it? And only you can answer that, but chances are it's one of the 3. And then you'll know what to do about it based on which it is. If it's number 2 or 3, stay in the relationship. Get yourself counseling if you need it. Meditate, go to yoga, work on your own psyche, and thank God for someone who loves you so much. And if it's number 1, then start to think about what that might look like in your life. And only you will know which of those it is.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Like Baldwin with People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I grew up loving circuses and other traveling animal shows, but it never occurred to me what life might be like for the animals. Training wild animals to do things they don't understand takes force. Routine discipline with a hook or whip with the heel of a boot shows the animal exactly who's the boss. Don't patronize animal acts. Please contact People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
757-622-PETA.
Welcome back. This is Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with inspiration and transformation.
I work in hospitality, so service is like my middle name. But there does come a point when people's demands constrain the definition of service. When we speak about service as a spiritual practice, whether we use the word seva or we use the term karma yoga, we're not talking about being a doormat to anyone and everyone's random demands and mood swings and issues. That's not what service means. Now, the person who asked the question began by saying, I work in hospitality. So for this person, it's not just a spiritual aspect, it's actually their job. Now, your job in hospitality might very well demand that you do the yes ma'am, yes sir to whatever anybody demands, depending on what your particular role is. If you're a concierge at a hotel, if you're a waiter or a waitress, or, these professions that really are in the service industry on that level. Yeah, of course, what you're being paid to do is keep people happy. At which point, whatever they demand, obviously your goal, as far as your career, is say yes as much as you can. Make it happen. That's why you've been hired. Nobody's going to hire a concierge whose, motto is "Nahi ji, wo to nahi ho payega. Nahi, wo to bahut mushkil ho jayega. Nahi, wo to." अच्छा काम करो आप कमरे में बैठ के TV देखते रहो. Right? You're not going to hire a concierge who just says that they can't possibly organize anything and you should sit in your room and watch TV all day. So you're being hired to be, a problem solver, a service person. But that's very different from service on a spiritual level. When we dedicate ourselves to be in service, it can take a lot of forms, a lot of ways. But it usually takes the form of saying, okay, God, let my every breath, this is what I was speaking about in the Arati this evening, let my every breath, every moment, every minute, be an offering to you. Meaning, let it not be about my ego. Let it not be about my illusion. Let it not be about how much can I grab and obtain. How much money or name or fame or prestige can I accumulate for myself? Or how much money for doing as little. The prayer is the opposite. The prayer is, oh God, let every minute and every moment of my life be an offering to you. Everything I do, let it be surrendered to you. That doesn't mean that anyone and everyone who wants anything and everything from me has to necessarily be taken, in my view, as the incarnation of God. Yes, at the core, on the soul level, on the highest truth level, we're one, right? Our souls are reflections of that universal soul. We are ultimately one with the Supreme Reality. But that doesn't mean that everybody is aware of that and anchored in that when they're telling you to do all sorts of things or asking all sorts of things from you. One way to think about it on just a purely logistic level is, let's say you've got a sum total of $100 in your bank account. Like, that's all you have. Now you walk down the street and everybody's got their hand out. And being a spiritual person, you're going to just keep giving. And that's beautiful. And then you're going to get to a point where you no longer have any money left. And you no longer will be able to give to anyone. And there won't even be enough money there to help you take the taxi or bus or train that you would need to get to work tomorrow, so you actually could earn some more money. So actually, by acceding to every single request demand, you've created a situation where you literally have nothing else to give. Where it's beautiful. I mean, it's like the giving tree story that, so many of us grew up on. It's a beautiful story. But it's a heart-wrenching story because, of course, at the end, the tree has nothing. Nothing to give the boy or anyone. And so when we talk about giving as a spiritual practice, it doesn't mean that I take any and every request, demand from anyone and everyone as sent from God. That's why we've got an inner voice. That's why we've got what Pujya Swamiji calls our inner GPS. Otherwise, in a walk home from work, a walk home from the grocery store, you could have nothing left to give. So, service doesn't mean that we leave our wisdom at the door. This is why in the Bhagavad Gita, when Bhagavan Krishna speaks about karma yoga, remember, he speaks about all of these paths together: bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, karma yoga. Well, karma yoga is this every action as yoga. But remember, we've also got jnana yoga, we've got wisdom. We've got the power of discrimination to know, for example, this person begging me for my money is just going to use it to get drunk or take drugs. I'm much better off using my money to donate it, for example, to the homeless shelter, where people like this actually can get a bed and a meal, rather than to stick it in the pockets of the homeless person, who very likely isn't going to actually use it to feed themselves. It's just buddhi. It's just the power of intellect, the power of common sense. So when we dedicate to service, remember that ultimately we are in the service of the divine, that the prayer is use me as an instrument on earth, but not an instrument of fulfilling every single person's ego desire. Right? I mean, God's highest goal is not that everyone's ego should be fulfilled. God's highest desire for us is not that everyone's ego should just get, buttered up and everyone's desire should be fulfilled. So it's not about, let me just be an instrument to fulfill everyone's desire, whether it's actually a functional desire or a dysfunctional desire. It's let me be an instrument of love, of peace, of healing, of divine connection, of truth. And sometimes that actually comes with saying no. Sometimes saying no is actually the greatest service you can do. There are times where not getting a desire fulfilled is actually the greatest gift you can give someone. Because the lesson that they learn is so much more powerful than what they would gain from simply having the desires fulfilled. So for your job in hospitality, yeah, you better just keep saying yes. But for your spiritual practice, use the power of discrimination. Because you've only got 24 hours in a day. You've only got a certain amount of time, of energy, of financial resources. We can't actually give them everywhere, which means that we need to use our intellect, our wisdom, and understand where to surrender, where to be of service. Getting our own egos out of the way, our own ignorance out of the way, our own illusion out of the way.
This brings to a close this hour of inspiration and transformation. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad to be together with you all each week, and I look forward to being together again next Thursday, same time, on OMTimes Radio.